everybody. Happy Independence Day if you're here in the States. If you're not, well, hope you're having a good, just ordinary July 4th then. But, hey, coming to you with no mail today, obviously. Being a holiday, nothing to deliver, but gonna do another show-off session here. I was actually just mentioning, got a comment from Scott Spalding on a previous entry about kind of some, not really obscure, but I guess kind of less represented sports out there, as I showed a bunch of hockey ones that I got back. I'd said, hey, you want some underrepresented stuff? Oh, just wait, I'll break out the indoor soccer collection one of these days. And so, you know what? No time like the present. So, got my binders of indoor soccer for my projects that I've been doing there. So I'm going to go ahead and show those off. Got several other viewers I know are going to hopefully really appreciate this. I know I've gotten some comments from Reindeer Studios on my Cleveland Crunch shirt before. And Paul Buxton, Seattle Sharks fan, has helped me out with a whole bunch of stuff on soccer-related things before, so I'm sure he'll enjoy this. And Rob Parker, I know, has commented on my Crunch stuff before, too. So hope you guys all enjoy this. I'm just going to go ahead and, go through and show off some of the stuff as I've done with some of my previous videos. But so the Major Indoor Soccer League started, I think it was back in the 78-79 season. And I should say also, part of the reason why I'm picking this weekend to do it was a year ago, I was out in Las Vegas for a weekend when the one of the former heads of the Major Indoor Soccer League put together a 40th anniversary reunion thing for a bunch of former players, fans, anybody who wanted to come out there for it. And I'd already started working on this autograph project, and I figured, hey, this is a really good opportunity to possibly go out there and get some of this stuff signed. And it did help me out. I was able to get some stuff done for my sets for guys I wasn't able to find by mail. And one of the coolest things of all, though, was that they played this, they rented out a field, one of the indoor fields, and put together a pickup game among everybody there. So I got to play goalie for a team going up against and playing alongside several former pro indoor players. Definitely one of the coolest sporting events I've ever been involved in my life. My team lost 4-3. Jim Sinclair sniped me for the game winner, but he did at least sign a photo for me after the game, which you'll see right here. So yeah, really cool getting that signed, and I got a bunch of them done like that. You'll see what the reasoning was for the style of the photo there in a bit, but I'm going to go ahead and go on through these here. But they started making the card sets in the 87-88 season. So right after 86-87, the Dallas Sidekicks actually were the champions of the league that year. So they were the reigning champs when the first set came out, and so they ended up as the first ones in there. But the indoor soccer league, or I guess pro indoor soccer, I should say, does actually have a Hall of Fame. Doesn't have its own building yet. It just is kind of a list of players who have been inducted into it right now, but hopefully one day they'll be able to actually have a building and display and everything like that. A few of these guys have actually gotten into the U.S. Soccer Hall of Fame as well, but the U.S. Soccer Hall of Fame has really not represented indoor soccer well enough, and I'm hoping that's something that'll change over the next few years. But go through just some of these ones here. A lot of these I've gotten signed through the mail. Back around almost 5 years ago, I started on this project to try to find where all these guys were, because I'd gotten some signed in person back at the 2002 All-Star Game and Skills Competition that they had at the, it was actually held at the Cleveland Sportsplex, which I don't think even exists anymore. I think it was sold to a church, and they may have taken over. I'm not really sure exactly what's going on with it, but this little thing, it had, one ice sheet, several indoor soccer fields, some gymnastics areas. I think it was a boxing gym there, too. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on in there. But my high school played all of their home games, both the varsity and JV level of high school hockey, out of that building. So I was very familiar with the building. I was the manager of the varsity team my junior year, and I played on the JV team as a senior. First time I'd ever been involved in hockey. But so I was involved, or I knew that building very well. And so I was able to not only get players to sign stuff at the autograph signing they had, but the few players who skipped the autograph signing, I was able to find a couple of them. So I was able to get like Hector Marinero and Tattoo to sign some stuff. But I'll just go through and show off some of these ones. That 87-88 set, the first one the Pacific put out, was loaded with a lot of errors and variations. And I mean, start with the second card in the set, where goaltender Chris Sobieski had two different versions there. As you can see, the corrected one right here has his name spelled Sobieski. The incorrect one on this side has, they kind of forgot that last I on it. So what I've been trying to do is get every single card, both the errors and the corrected versions, variations, anything like that, all signed. So he was one that I was able to get. Sobieski has done a lot with the Dallas Sidekicks alumni. Whenever they do an alumni game, he's played in at least a couple of them here recently, and that's how I've gotten him to sign these cards here. Let's see here. Got Victor Moreland, who's a longtime solid defenseman. Played in the NASL as well, and they actually had a 50th anniversary of the NASL event back in... When was that? Was that fall of 2018, I want to say? Something like that. Around fall of 2018. The 50th anniversary event had a lot of these guys on hand for, played an alumni game out there, and they were all so great about signing stuff. So I've gotten Moreland by mail. I've gotten him in person a few times. Always really great. Sobieski, like I said, got him in person. They also screwed up on Willie Molino's card. Put him as Willie Molino on the first version of it, and then corrected it to make it Willie Molano. Let's see here, who else? Like I said, the Dallas Sidekicks started off the set here, so they had Tattoo, Chris Sobieski, Victor Moreland, Willie Molano, Kevin Smith, Wes McLeod, Eddie Radwanski, Mark Carpin, another card of Tattoo. They did one for him winning the MVP award and then one for just his regular card. Also, Mike Powers and Doc Lawson. We'll show off Doc here. Doc was one of the ones who showed up for the event out in Las Vegas and got to play on the team there with him, so it's pretty cool. Doc is actually, he was born in Liberia and is still heavily involved with a lot of charitable efforts over there, where he's got a company called, charity called Donami Sport, and it's trying to get sporting equipment for kids over there in Liberia, and he's just been doing a lot of work there. It's constantly going back and forth between Liberia and the U.S. And, I mean, he played forever with the Sidekicks, mostly. I mean, actually, no, it wasn't mostly with the Sidekicks. He was with Cincinnati, Philadelphia, New York, and Dallas. And late in his career, Sidekicks were well out of playoff contention, and they wanted to give him possibly a chance to help a team get into the playoffs, and one of his teammates from Dallas had just been traded out there, Richard Chinapoo. And they had a deal lined up that Chinapoo would be traded back to Dallas for Lawson, and Lawson said, no, I'd rather finish out of this because, and not get into the playoffs one last time, because Chinapoo had just paid to move his entire family out to Baltimore. It's like, it wouldn't be right to, you know, uproot him and have to send him back to where he just came from and everything. And so instead of having that one last chance at a championship, missed out on it to make sure that his friend didn't have to pay out a whole bunch of extra money. Moving on after that, they had the Tacoma Stars as the second team in this set, and one of the most recent ones I've gotten signed for this set is Steve Jungle. Steve's known as the Lord of all indoors, one of the greatest indoor soccer players of all time. Back when he was with New York in, let's see here, in the 80-81 and 81-82 seasons, he scored 108 and 103 goals, respectively, and that's in a 40-game season. So, yeah, more than a goal and a half a game. That's kind of ridiculous numbers right there. So, well earned on that nickname right there. But yeah, the Tacoma team had a few guys whose names you might recognize, even if you're just a casual soccer fan, as Preki was one of the guys on that team. He is one who is in the U.S. Soccer Hall of Fame. Played in the MLS, one of the first big players in the MLS. I think he was with the Kansas City Wiz, if I remember right. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. I don't know my outdoor quite as well as I know indoor. But a lot of other guys who are in there from that team. Greg Blassingame, Bernie James, Joey Waters. Greg Blassingame, his dad was actually a former Major League Baseball player back in the 1960s. Let's see here. A few other Tacoma players. Ricky Davis is in the Indoor Soccer Hall of Fame, and I think also the U.S. Soccer Hall of Fame. And he's one who had an error in this set as well. He now owns a steakhouse in, I think, either Kansas or Missouri. But as you see, they misspelled his name with the E, the first edition, and then got it corrected later on. Got both of those signed by mail. That was Ralph Black, Bill Crook, Peter Ward, Gary Heel, and Godfrey Ingram. Ingram's another one that had an error because misspelled his first name on there. No E on the first one, and then E on the corrected version. This one here, the error version, is signed on the back. That one I actually picked up off of a lot that was on eBay. Got kind of lucky and found a whole bunch of signed cards in it, some signed photos, a signed kid's t-shirt, a whole bunch of random stuff. A bunch of unsigned cards too. I figured, you know what, for what, 25, 30 bucks, I'll take a chance on that, and glad I did, because there were several I needed for my sets in there, included in the Ingram error right there. But also Slobo Ilishevsky, who we'll get to here in a bit, had 2 cards signed by him in there. Maybe even 3 now that I think of it. But yeah, moving on. They had the Cleveland... Okay, they threw a random Cleveland Force card, Ali Kazamaini, in there. Followed by the Wichita Wings with Mike Stankovich, Mike Fox, Kevin Cooley, Eric Rasmussen, Barry Wallace, Al Smith, Terry Rowe, and Gary Stanley. Barry Wallace was lucky to get this one. I think I picked it up in a trade at some point, not sure, but if I remember right, Wallace died a couple of years ago, and so glad to be able to get that one. A lot of these guys, like I said, I ended up getting through the mail. Let's see here. Stankovich, Fox, Cooley, Gary Stanley, Al Smith. Gary Stanley was a fun one. He's over in the UK now, and so he's one that didn't sign on the front, but signed on the back there. Had to send over to the UK to be able to get that one, but about a month turnaround, it came back to me. Terry Rose, another one who's over in the UK now, and this one I had to... I think I picked up in a trade with a friend of mine out in Baltimore, but signed on the back there as well. Let's see. So yeah, that was Wichita. Marcio Lighty, forgot to mention him, or Leedy. He's with, he actually, you see he's in the photo there with Dallas, on the card with Wichita, but he lives here in the Dallas area now and has been out to a few of the Sidekicks alumni events. Now we're getting into more of the Cleveland players that I mentioned before. We had Ali Kazamaini was one of the ones that was in there, but for the Cleveland Force, it was Carl Valentine, Kai Hoskevy, Craig Allen, John Stolmeyer, Desmond Armstrong, Benny Dargle, and Gino DeFlorio. Also, Victor Nogueira. I'll get into him here in a moment, but Hoskevy is one of my favorite ones. He is from Finland originally, which is where my background is from as well. And he was another one who was out there at the MISL event in Las Vegas, so it's really cool getting to hang out with him and talk to him a few times there. But he was at the NASL event here in Dallas as well. I got a photo with him, which he later signed that copy of it for me at the MISL event. Had to send to Craig Allen. He actually lives in Guernsey, over off the coast of the UK. Again, though, he was great about signing for me and getting my card back to me. Let's see here. I was going to mention, yeah, Victor Nogueira. This is another one that has an error on it. Took a while for me to notice it, and I think Trading Card Database doesn't even mention it yet at all, but see the spelling on the last name changes there. E-I-R-A versus E-R-I-A. The E-I-R-A is the correct version there. But the E-R-I-A version I got signed at the 2002 event there in Cleveland. Got the other one in a trade. But he has played and I think has more games goaltended and more goaltending wins than anybody in indoor soccer history. So, living legend of the sport right there. Had the St. Louis Steamers after that. Daryl Doran is probably the best known one out of there. This was a midfielder. I remember him mostly as a defenseman. He moved back later in his career. Absolute wizard, though, on the pitch, and I think he may have played more indoor soccer games than anyone in history. I'll have to... Don't quote me on that one, but I think that's accurate. Hope it is. I mentioned Slobo Ilishevsky. I got this one as one of the ones off of that eBay lot. Sign-in pen there, but I got 3 of those out of it. But Ilishevsky actually died in a senior game. He was playing in a senior tournament and dropped dead of like an aneurysm or a heart attack or a stroke or something like that, just out of nowhere. So he's one where it's kind of tough to find autographs from, obviously, because no longer with us, but very lucky to be able to grab those. And I actually did meet him as well at the 2002 Cleveland event. Moving through, San Diego Sockers are probably the best known team in the MISL. They seem to, if they weren't winning the championship every year, they were at least in the running for the championship every year. So a lot of big names that you'll find on there. And so, because I mentioned before, what's his name, Steve Jungle, he used to play with San Diego for a bit in there. Branko Segota is another very big name in indoor soccer. Played with San Diego. A lot of these guys were with the New York Arrows, too, who were kind of the elite team early on. Brian Quinn is another one that's got him through the mail, kind of a bigger name there. Took a while, took over a year to come back to me, but glad it did. Kevin Crow, he is I think he may be in the U.S. Soccer Hall of Fame as well as the Indoor Hall of Fame. The late Fernando Clavijo. Clavijo really helped to rebuild FC Dallas's team. And he ended up battling cancer, overcame it once, second time, unfortunately, got him. That was a little over a year ago that he died, but got to meet him a couple times before he passed, and just such a great guy. Really cool to get to talk to him. So, move on. We've got Zoltan Toth, goalie. He was another one who was out there in Vegas, really great, signed a ton for me, always had some really great stories. And when I mailed to him back in 2015, I've got a lot of letters back from these players. I mean, it's not just, a lot of other sports you'll see a guy who will sign and send back, and that's it. So many of these guys took the time to actually write notes back and say, hey, wow, thanks for remembering me. Hey, this is so great to hear from fans and everything. He writes back, because I mentioned, being in Dallas area now and being raised in the Cleveland area, and he's like, well, I guess you got a better football team out of it at least. I'm like, oh, come on, dude, really? So, but he was really great. So got to meet him out in Vegas as well. Julie V is another big one. 2 2s, 3 E's, the one and only Julie V. He was out there in Vegas too, and I actually got help from a friend of mine to get him first. A friend of mine had mentioned something about meeting him. I'm like, really? Because I've got a couple of cards I need signed by him. I've tried mailing him with no luck, and Greg said, yeah, just mail him out to me. Here's my address. I'll see what I can do for you. And a couple months later, they came back to me, and the envelope was unsealed, but fortunately the cards were signed, got back to me and everything. So yeah, it was really great to be able to get that. And he was out in Vegas as well. Julie V actually works as an artist now, and it was so cool. He had some prints of some of his art pieces, all soccer-themed art. But he had some prints of a lot of his pieces for us all to take home with us, and so I've got a couple of those here that don't know how I'm going to display them just yet. I should probably frame them up and put them up somewhere, but at the very least, I've got the things. There's some really cool-looking ones. A few other players for San Diego. One of the ones to mention here is Brian Schmetzer. Part of the legendary Schmetzer family of indoor soccer. Brian, Andy, and Walter all played in the MISL, and I think their father's name was Walter too, and I think he was one of the early pioneers of the outdoor game here in the U.S., but there's Brian's card. He's actually a coach up in, I want to say, with the Seattle Sounders right now, one of their assistant coaches, maybe even their head coach right now, but yeah, he's coaching up there, still active in soccer. Moving on to Kansas City, Alan Mayer was there out in Vegas, and he signed this one for me there. Signs the card sideways, so show you like that, but you turn it that way, you'll notice he puts a goal around his autograph. Kind of a cool looking thing there, but he was out there, got to play in the that pickup game there with us. He was on the other team against me, but it was funny. I was riding back in an Uber with him, and he's like, the last shot where I got scored on for the game winner, he's like, dude, come on, you should have had that. I mean, you just have to grow like a foot taller, jump 6 feet in the air, stretch out in full, and time it just right. You should have had that save. Come on. But he was so cool about it. His son and grandson were actually out there playing with us as well. I think his son actually works in the front office of the current Kansas City Comets indoor team. Kansas City had a lot of really great players from all over the world. Jan Goossens is another one to mention. He's the one where I actually had to send to the Netherlands to get him. But it came back to me. And Kim Runtved, who still lives here in the U.S. He's actually, I believe he was the Kansas City coach a couple of years ago. He may have coached a couple of other teams there. I'm not sure if it was just Kansas City, but probably a couple of the indoor teams out there, but still lives in either Kansas or Missouri. I think he's actually in Kansas now, but signed several for me by mail. There's Gino Schiraldi, Dave Bonchek, Damir Haramina. I picked this one up in a trade, but I actually just talked to him the other day through Facebook. So I have one other card I'd like to get signed by him, and he said, yeah, hey, here's my address, just send it on through. And so I'll hopefully have a different one here to either replace this one or to go along with it, either one. If he signs in a Sharpie, he'll be replacing that one, but if not, hey, I'm good with that one too. Tasso Koutsoukas is actually up in Quebec now. He owns a convenience store there. Took a little bit of hunting around, but I was able to find which one he owned and mail to him, and got that one back. Dale Mitchell, also up in Canada. I was able to contact him by email, just ask him, hey, can I get your address to send these? He's like, yeah, no problem, here you go, and got him back. So Chicago Sting, I mentioned before that I've shown off a lot of the errors in there. I'm not really sure which of these would be considered the errors and which one would be considered more of like which one's an error, which one's correct, so I just kind of call them variations. But the Chicago Sting, they ended up making 2 different versions. One where the text on the card was in white and one where the text was in black, and I think the version with the text in black looks a lot better, as you can see on the Ben Collins cards there. It's a lot easier to read, but every single player for Chicago in that set had both of those versions. So that completely doubles the size of one team that I had to get signed, but fortunately, again, able to get through all of those. I think I've actually gotten all of the errors and variations and all that kind of stuff signed. But they had Chris Vaccaro was in there, Heinz Wirtz, Ben Collins, who I just showed off, Frank Klopas, Paul Crump, Chico Moriera. God, Chico Moriera was one who... This one took me forever to find. I had like 6 different addresses for him, all in the Cleveland area, so I knew he was kind of around there, but I didn't know exactly where. Tried several, got several return to senders, and finally it's like, all right, I'm going to try this last one. Hopefully it comes back to me, and if not, fine, screw it, I give up. It came back to me, and the envelope was completely mangled by some piece of postal equipment, and so the card that's on the left here, as you can see, got the brunt of it right up in this area. But it got signed at least. And I was able to contact through Facebook. I think I found his wife on Facebook and asked, hey, these got mangled. Is that all right if I resend? She said, oh, yeah, that's fine. Go ahead and resend. So I just need to come up with, new unsigned copies of all these to get them redone. But a few of them I picked up in trades here and there are just fine. I can stick with those. They're no problem there. Who else? Batata, Ted Kraft, Mark Simonton. They almost did the same thing with Minnesota as well. Only one player, I think, though, ended up with this weird difference here. And that was Tino Lettieri, goalkeeper. Did one in red and one in green. Not really sure why they did the one in green, unless, they just happened to flip the design too soon or something and everything there, but got both of those signed by him. He owns a pizzeria up in Minnesota now. I think it's in Excelsior, one of the Twin Cities suburbs. Sounds familiar to me, at least. Who else? Alan Willie was in here. He was actually another one who was at the NASL event in Dallas. Actually saw him out at a mall in between a couple of the events there. My friend Aaron and I went over and just, they're like, all right, yeah, we'll go and grab a bite real quick and then head back and see what we can find before the game. And happened to see him walking around out there. It's like, oh, hey, yeah, we'll wait. We'll find him after the game there. And yeah, he was cool about it. Signed after the game, but yeah. Gary Etherington had a name misspelling that they corrected, so I've got both of those done. Dwight Lodawages, I had to send over to the Netherlands. I think it was for him. Hector Marinero, this is the very first one that I ever got signed for this project. That was at the 2002 All-Star event there in Cleveland. Marinero is an absolute legend. He is the all-time leading scorer in indoor soccer history. And, yeah, I mean, he was... I got lucky there because, well, he skipped out on the post-event autograph signing. But I just happened to see him coming off the field, and I just quickly run over, like, Hector, do you mind signing a card for me? He's like, yeah, signs it real quick, and runs off to the bathroom. I'm like, oh, didn't mean to delay you from that, but oh well. It happens. Who else? Ken Fogarty, they misspelled as Ken Forgerty and then corrected it to Fogarty. Those, by the way, are, the Minnesota Strikers I mentioned there. The Los Angeles Lasers were also represented in there, and Chico Borja is one of my favorite ones. He's one of the first ones I was able to get back by mail. He's actually the principal, I think he's assistant principal and golf coach. He may be an assistant soccer coach as well with a high school down in Florida. Plantation High School, it seems, possibly. Sounds right to me, at least, but yeah. David Bursic, I don't know how it's pronounced. But he owns it's a soccer equipment store in St. Louis area now. Thompson Usian is owner of a tax service out in California. It's Mark Fredrickson, Chris White, Michael Collins, Gus Mokalis, and Lee Cornwell. Mokalis was another one who was out there in Las Vegas with us. And then finishing off the set were the Baltimore Blast and Bruce Savage, Keith Van Aaron, who I had to pick up in a trade, Tim Whitman, Richard Chinapu, who I mentioned earlier in this video, Andy Chapman, Drago, Mike Reynolds. Unfortunately, a tragic story there. Reynolds was active as a player in between the 1990-91 and the 91-92 seasons. He was working with a youth summer camp. had this sudden either aneurysm or stroke, dropped from that, and 3 days later died during the middle of his playing career. So he's another one where autograph cards of him can be very tough to find. This one I picked up in a different eBay lot. I don't think the seller quite knew what he had there, because in there was Mike Reynolds right here, and also Stan Stamenkovich, who also died fairly young. I think he'd moved back to Europe by the time he died, but got both of those in there and several other Baltimore players I was missing, and I don't think I even paid $20, including shipping, for it. So it's the great thing about this is that sometimes you can find some stuff that people really don't know what kind of a rarity they have, and I hate to say take advantage of them, but yeah, you take advantage of the deal that they're offering there. So got Reynolds, got Stamenkovich. Let's see who else here. I think that's the last one there. I'll have to look through. Yeah, okay. I think it's the next set here has a couple of wrong player error cards. I have to look and see, make sure here first. I know there's at least a couple in there. I'm trying to think if the one that I'm thinking of... Yep, the one that I'm thinking of is in there, so we'll get to that here in a moment. But so the 88-89 set, they changed the... show the design off real quick here with the Julie V card right there. Started out with the all-decade team for the MISL, where they picked, what is this, 10 players in here? Yeah, 10 players. Actually, might be 11 or 12 even. And made the all-decade team. So Steve Jungle was on there, Stan Stamenkovich, whom I don't have that one signed. I mentioned that he died in 96, I think it was. But getting on the team also were Julie V, Kai Haskavy, Branko Segota, Fernando Clavijo, Kim Rontved, Zoltan Toth, Slobo Ilozhevsky, who I don't have signed, Mike Stankovic, and Steve Jungle. Okay, Steve Jungle got Player of the Decade and the All-Decade team, so that's how we got 2 cards early on in there. But yeah, I started with San Diego in there. I'm just gonna go through and find like any of the bigger names I can think of and just show them off. Zoran Karic's rookie card is in here. He's the second all-time leading scorer, who also played right alongside Hector Marinero. So that was pretty cool in Cleveland for a number of years, having the 2 all-time leading scorers in indoor soccer history playing on the same line together for the same team. So that's how we were able to win a couple of indoor soccer championships in that year. It's the only championships that Cleveland won between the 64 Browns and the 16 Cavs. George Fernandez made his debut in here. He's another one who played for quite a bit in Cleveland, actually still lives in the Cleveland area now. Mailed him once back in 2015, got everything back signed, tried 2 more times to get some other ones done, and never saw them again, so not sure what happened there. Let's see here. Just trying to think if there's any big names I haven't shown off. I'll try to show them. So Jerry Gray is one of them. He's a Canadian who played for, let's see, Golden Bay, Chicago, Tacoma, St. Louis, and back to Tacoma again on there. But he's another one who was at the Vegas event. I was hanging out with him quite a bit there. Nice guy. Let's see here. Kia Zulgarnayan is from Iran originally. He was actually an assistant coach at my high school a number of years after I graduated from it. But he still is around the Cleveland area. He played for the Crunch for a number of years. Shown with Kansas City on that one. Let's see. So I mentioned before that there's several wrong player errors in there, and this is the first one. They meant to put David Doyle on this card, and instead it is Duncan McEwen. And so Doyle signed it for me in person. That's how I found out that it was the wrong player on there, because he's signing. He says, that's not even me in the photo there, right? And I'm like, really? Who is that? And he thinks for a second. He goes, Duncan McEwen. It's like, all right. New project now. Try to see if I can get both on there. And so I was able to track McEwen down, mailed it to him, and got it back along with a note saying, wow, hey, yeah, that's great. You're able to find me on there. And he signed it too. So really cool to get that one done. Let's see here. So another one of them is Mike Sweeney who was supposed to be on this card, and they instead ended up putting Dave McKenzie on. McKenzie had been retired for a season by this point. So it's McKenzie in the photo, Sweeney on the card. So Sweeney signed it for me by mail, and I got McKenzie to sign it in Las Vegas. So that's kind of cool. I mean, Mackenzie was one of the first ones I ran into and was talking to quite a bit. Ended up hanging out with him a lot during the weekend. He's a former hockey player too. When he was at Colgate, he played both hockey and soccer, and still does stuff with Colgate's hockey alumni game every year too, and goes and plays in that. So really cool to get to trade some stories with that. His wife was there with him. His wife was cool as all hell. So that was what was so great. Was I mean, so many of these players' families were there, and they're like, "Oh my god, I got to see these cards. I got to see these. Wow, this is so great!" And looking through and talking about, "Oh yeah, I remember this player, and playing alongside him or against him, as the case may be." I took all my set binders there with me out to there. So moving on, we've got who else? Dale Irvine. He's a 500 goal scorer all time in indoor soccer. He actually works I think in finance in some capacity out in California now. Here's another one I mailed to early on. I tried a second time and never got anything back, unfortunately. Let's see here. I mentioned Victor Moreland. I don't think I showed off one of his autographs, though, but here he is with the Wichita Wings. Signed it, Keep Kicking, Moreland 18. It's kind of interesting. He personalized a few of them, but then didn't personalize some, but added like the Keep Kicking message on them, and it's cool. I like the variety like that. It's always good. Let's see. Here's another one. Was AJ Lakawecki's card. If you look at that autograph, that definitely does not say AJ Lakawecki on that signature, and that's because the photo is Chris Pete, who was the backup goalie for LA, went on to go to Cleveland and then played in Wichita not long after that. So got Pete to sign it, and then mailed it off to Lakawecki and just said, "Hey, yeah, if you don't mind signing it, I know it doesn't have your photo on, but it was supposed to have your photo. Sign it near the top there or on the back or something like that." And so that's what he did, was he signed it on the back there too. I always like when players take different colors on their ink choices, and Jim Gorsick there in that gold came out really awesome. This is actually the last year of the LA Lasers. They went completely under. You also notice there's no St. Louis Steamers in this set, or Cleveland Force. Both those teams went completely under and then returned the next year under different names. But yeah, this is the final year of the LA Lasers. Dallas Sidekicks finished off the set, and this is also the first year I put all the coaches in there, and so I got Sir Gordon Jago on that card. He's currently the color commentator on their radio broadcast for the current Sidekicks team. Knighted by the Queen, used to work with the Baltimore Orioles, actually baseball, in their front office for a bit. Did a whole lot of work with, I'm trying to remember which soccer team it was in the UK, but I mean, he's been around the game forever. His autobiography came out a couple of years ago. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but definitely going to whenever I have a moment to do so. Let's see here. Yeah, the great thing is there are no spelling errors or anything like that, or no weird variations. Just the photo problems was the only thing here with the 88-89 set. So I mentioned earlier when I showed the photo of the card, or when I showed the photo that's designed after a card that what's his name, Jim Sinclair signed for me. I'll show the design here, but the Steve Jungle card here, and it's that design right there. That's the 89-90 set, probably my all-time favorite soccer card set design. Not really sure why, just I love the setup of it. I actually did one of my business cards in the same style and everything too. But yeah, let's start with San Diego again right off the bat in it. Dallas Sidekicks came up second. Let's see. Go ahead and show off the tattoo one there. So I don't think I've shown a tattoo autograph yet. So tattoo, the third leading scorer all-time in indoor soccer history, I think. Either third all-time in points or third all-time in goals. He might be third all-time in both, actually. Bruno Ferretti, I got lucky on him. He actually owns a tile company here in the Dallas area, but found a couple of addresses on him online. First one came back, returned to sender. The second one, never saw anything, and then suddenly I get a message from someone on Facebook on, I think it was actually the Saturday before Easter Sunday one year, just says, "Hi, Drew," and it says last name Ferretti, and I'm like, "Hi, are you related to Bruno by any chance?" She's like, "Yeah, I got your letter from my dad here. It got sent to a house that he owns, she manages, but she rents out. And so it just got sent there, obviously, because that's the only address I had. Unfortunately, the whoever the tenant was able to hang on to it, got it to her, and she said, "Yeah, I'm getting it to my father here. We'll get it signed at Easter and send it back to you." There, he said it was really great to hear from a fan and everything. And yeah, about a week later, they all came back signed for me, and that was one of them right there. But yeah, Bruno, he's in the Dallas area, but hasn't been out to any of the Sidekicks alumni events at all that I've been to, at least. So hopefully that'll change. Hopefully the Sidekicks are able to come back with some alumni events, since I don't think they did anything with the alumni this year, and I'm not really sure about last year even. So you do sometimes just see the guys out there randomly at games, so I've gotten a few guys to sign there, but not very often. Let's see here. Marcel Loosveld, I had to mail this one also off to the Netherlands. Looks like he tried to sign it in a really, really bad drying out pen, and then went over it instead in a ballpoint pen. So looks like kind of a mess, but if you see it in person, it looks a lot better than it does on the screen there. Let's see here. Baltimore was next up. Okay, so here's a fun one. This one also had a couple of wrong photo variations in it, and starting with the card of Scoop Stanisic, their goaltender. And this photo, or this card of him, the original one, that is not him in the photo there, that is actually Scott Manning who's in there. And of what I've heard, Stanisic hates signing this card. And so I tried mailing him a couple times, never heard anything back. And so this lot comes up on eBay. Had a whole bunch of signed cards from all across all these seasons of these sets. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh god, do I want to pull the trigger on this? I mean, it cost me like $100 to do it. Yeah, I'll wait a little bit, then maybe make an offer. And in the meantime, like in the hour before I decide, okay, I'm going to put that offer in, somebody else outbid me on it. And I'm just like, oh no. And a friend of mine happens to see my Facebook post on. He's like, he calls me a couple hours later. He's like, yeah, I debated whether to call you about this because it seemed like you were pretty upset about that, but I was the one who bought that, and I'll make a deal with you for any of them that you need. And I'm like, yes, please, please, and thank you. So, yeah, my friend Brian ended up coming across that one and bought it, and so I was able to get this one signed by Stanisic himself. And it actually also had this one that was signed by Stanisic. This one they eventually corrected later on. But I think they only put it in certain box sets, because I bought a couple of the box sets and it wasn't in there either. I broke all sorts of packs of it, never saw it in any of those. But they corrected it, finally got the right photo on there, and that one's signed, of course, by Stanisic. And so after I got this one, the error version, I then sent it off to Manning, and he signed it right across the top there as well. So really great to be able to get that one done. That was a huge hit right there for Brian to be able to land that one and be willing to hook me up with the ones that I needed out of it. Let's see, here's Manning's corrected, or Manning's regular card in there, which he signed for me by mail a while before that. Baltimore's had they've had a lot of players die young, actually, and one of them that I've seen a couple of cards of, but don't have one signed for yet, is Dominic Mobilio. Died of, I think it was a heart attack around 2004 or thereabouts. I go back to this previous set real quick. Back to where Baltimore was. They had Slobo Ilozhevsky, who I mentioned. He actually played a little bit with Baltimore in that time as well. And there's a couple more players I'll probably get into a little bit later. Of course, I mentioned... totally blanking on the names now. I mean, I've been at this for almost a little over half an hour now. But yeah, Stan Stamenkovich died in 1996. You had Mike Reynolds die as he was active as a player. And one other one to mention here that I got in a trade was Billy Ronson. I think it was around 2016, 2017, somewhere around there, died of a heart attack. So a lot of Baltimore Blast players there from 1980s and early 90s who have died young. Let's see here. Pedro De Brito of the Wichita Wings, another one who died fairly young. He was involved in a car accident in, I think, Connecticut a few years back. I have a signed photo of him from this, his Sidekicks days, but that's the only autograph of his that I have right now. Perry Vanderbeck, he's one who was at the NASL events and the MISL 40th event, so got him a few times at those places. Let's see. Eric Rasmussen has been tough to nail down. I finally found him on Facebook and tried messaging him. I haven't heard anything back. I think I shotgunned out about like 15 messages to former players. I've heard back from 3 of them so far. But Rasmussen is one that I'm hoping for, because this one I had to pick up in a trade, and it's actually personalized to Ray, the guy that I traded to get it from. It's like, all right, yeah, that's a good one to hold, to be a good placeholder there for a bit, but I'd like to hopefully get one that's either not personalized or at least personalized to me rather than someone else, but I've at least got that one as a placeholder for now. Let's see here. Kansas City Comets. Was Mike Dowler one of them? Yeah, Mike Dowler was one. He's actually a phys ed teacher at a school in Wales, his home country, and so mailed over to him, got that one back, sent through the school, I think. What's cool about this one is he signed it both on the front and on the back. He did that with all the cards I sent to him, so 4 cards, 8 autographs. Kind of a cool deal there. I'll take that. Let's see. David Hagen took me a while to find. I actually had to, what's his name? Dave McKenzie was actually able to help me out with him. Said, yeah, hey, here's his address. I talk to him all the time, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind signing them at all. So sent to him, and finally got all my David Hagen cards signed just a little under a year ago. Former Cleveland guy. Mentioned before, Brian Schmetzer. Here is his brother, Andy Schmetzer, former Cleveland Crunch player. I think he also played for the Force briefly, and yeah, he did. Played 2 seasons with the Force. Went to Tacoma, then back to the Crunch later on. And the third brother, Walter Schmetzer, also former Cleveland Force. So I mentioned before that the St. Louis Steamers went out of the league after the 87-88 season. Came back for the 89-90 season instead it was the St. Louis Storm. But a lot of these guys who are in the Storm uniforms end up not even playing for them, and a couple of these guys, I think, maybe even, I know a couple of them got possibly traded before the season, maybe even straight up cut before the season. Not sure if they ever even played pro indoor at all, but they did have a few big names there. Fernando Clavijo, who I mentioned earlier, was one of them. Let's see, Diego Mendigaran has been around quite a bit in the MISL, NPSL, all those. Yeah, I think it was Emil Dragicevic. I couldn't find much in the way of any stats on him. Not sure if he played any games or not, but had the card there as one of the early players for the new St. Louis Storm. They had Thompson Usian was there as well. And this is the Slobo Ilizhevsky autograph that I got at the Cleveland event back in 2002. Who else? Nenad Markusevich was another one that I'm not sure that he ever played any games, but had to mail to him over in one of the former Yugoslavian countries, and he signed it right on the back there. Great signature there. I mean, letter perfect, nice and clear. Very stylish as well. Don Popovich was a legendary coach, and not sure really which side is up on this signature of his, but he actually wrote on the back of the envelope, hey, thanks for supporting the game. We need more fans like you around. So, like I said, I'm not sure if that's the right side up or if that's the right side up, but either way, Don Popovich's signature. And I mentioned it also, the Cleveland Force did the same thing as the Steamers, bowed out after the 87-88 season, then came back in the 89-90 season as the Cleveland Crunch. They brought in Kai Hoskevy as a player and coach for that team. Several former Force players came back with Bernie James after played a long time with the Force, played 2 years at Tacoma, then back to the Crunch. They had a big rookie named Michael King, who went on to become one of the all-time leading scorers in indoor soccer history. I'll show that one off on a better card. This one, it's kind of a dark background, so it's kind of tough to see. But I mentioned Chris Pete earlier on because they had that card of AJ Lakawecki. That photo look familiar? It's the exact same photo right there that was used on Pete's card in the 89-90 set. Pete's another one who never played a single game with the Crunch. He ended up getting traded to, I think it was Wichita, before even playing a single game with the Crunch. Paul Wright was the same way. Wright was with San Diego, got picked by the Crunch in the expansion draft, and then traded right back to San Diego before ever playing a single game in Cleveland. Dev Reeves is actually here in the Dallas area, so I've met him at some of the Sidekicks alumni. And Theo Kulsdom, this one I mailed off to him over in the Netherlands. Never got anything. Well, oh no. Okay, when I sent him in the Netherlands, yeah, I got it back. A note from somebody saying, yeah, he doesn't live here anymore. I looked up on Facebook. He might be in Sheffield, England. You might want to try contacting him there. And so I sent him a message. I'm like, hey, longtime Crunch fan. Got some cards. Would you mind signing them? He's like, oh yeah, here you go, and sent me his new address. He was back in the Netherlands again, but got him eventually. You'll notice the all these urns are posed at the Crunch's training facility. All the Storm ones were taken in a very empty arena. We'll show the front of that Markusevich card. Do what you got to do to get those photos in, I guess. A couple others. They had Simon Keith. Interesting one there. Simon Keith is the first one to play pro sports after a heart transplant. Had a heart transplant not long before getting drafted by the Crunch. Played a couple seasons of pro soccer and he's retired now, but he works with a, I think it's like a heart transplant related charity in the Las Vegas area. Bobo Lucic, I had to mail off to Slovenia to get him, but got that one back about a year ago. And so yeah, like I said, that was my favorite set design out of any of the sets that they put out there by Pacific. Got 3 more binders worth here. I'm just going to go through a few quick stories on a few guys here if I can. Just try to quickly go through, and any big names I haven't covered yet, I'll show them off. Any important stories. I had mentioned before, this 9091 set is probably going to be the toughest one to complete. It was the biggest one out of all of them, and there are 3 guys in there whose cards are going to be almost impossible to get signed. Mike Reynolds, of course, being one that I'd mentioned before. This card would have come out within probably 6 months to a year of his death, so if there are any signed out there, it's not too many of them. Let's see, moving on through here. Yes, Wilojewski is in there. Stan Terletsky is another one where he was a really great player over here in the U.S. I mean, he had... with Pittsburgh, he had a 74-goal and a 65-goal season back-to-back years. Not sure if he went over to the AISA and NPSL for a bit or what, but he doesn't have any stats on here from 86 to 89. Came back for the 89-90 season with St. Louis, and he eventually went back to Poland. He ended up homeless for quite a while, from what I've heard, and died a couple years ago. I want to say maybe 2 years ago. It was late part of 2018, late part of 2017, something like that. But haven't seen any of these ones signed at all. That one's probably going to be one of the tougher ones to be able to eventually find. Let's see here. I'll show the other one of Billy Phillips here in a minute. Eloy Salgado, I had to pick this one up in a trade as well. He unfortunately has had some legal issues after his career has come to an end, and so tracking him down was kind of tough there for a while. I've seen a few people get him, but he's only going to sign one per request, so it's like, yeah, I'll just go ahead and go with these ones I got in the trades. Joe Papaleo has been tough to nail down, too. I know he's coaching in the Syracuse area, but I got that one, another one that I picked up in a trade. Haven't been able to get my other one signed yet. I've tried mailing him at least twice at different addresses. I think one got a return to sender, one never came back at all. I mentioned Michael King earlier as one of the top scorers of all time in indoor. He actually started with, played briefly with Dallas, I think. It doesn't, all the stats on here say Cleveland. But they list Cleveland for 88-89, and there was no Cleveland team in 88-89. But got this one signed by him. He was one of, I think he was the first one that I got back when I started mailing for these. But he eventually went on to the Milwaukee Wave and played for them for probably 15 years, if I had to take a guess. It was a long time. I mean, I think he has over 700 career goals. One of the top indoor players of all time. Let's see. Guaranteed to be the toughest autograph to get in this set is a guy named Nenad Nikolic. It took me forever to find any info on this guy, and look at his stats on the back here. He was actually recommended by Preki to the Stars coach to sign him, and so they eventually did. He played only that 88-89 season. This card was actually a 90-91 card, so he may have been completely out of the league for more than... okay, I think this is actually a... I think it's an error on the back. I think he actually played in the 89-90 season that listed as 88-89. Because it says that he was signed in October of 89, so it's got to be an error there. But he only played that 89-90 season. This card came out for the 90-91 season, and by that point he was... not sure if he was totally out of the league, if he was just off the team, if he just didn't play on the team, what exactly the deal was there. But if there are any signed out there, it's not going to be very many. It's got to be somebody, like up in the Tacoma area, or somebody over in the former Yugoslavia. So Nikolic returned back to Serbia and entered the Serbian military. And of course, there's all the stuff going on with Kosovo, everything with the whole breakup of the Soviet Union. And Nikolic was actually part of a group that was hit in the NATO bombings of April of 1999 and was killed while he was in an effort to try to rescue people from one of the buildings that had been bombed. He got hit by the second wave and killed. So the chances of there being any cards of him out there signed, close to zero. But I'm hoping eventually that I might be able to track one down if one exists, but I'm not holding my breath on that one. Let's see. The late Keith Weller, he died from a brain tumor, I believe also around 2004 or thereabouts. Picked this one up in a trade fairly recently. Mentioned David Doyle having that error card. This is a corrected photo of him on the 90-91 card. That's one of the things with the 90-91 set is they did a really good job of actually making sure that everything was pretty much totally correct, at least on the fronts of the cards there. So if there's any errors on there, it's, like a text-based error somewhere on the back. So really good job there by Pacific this time around. Forgot to mention this one. Kevin Hundelt, I have his 90-91 card signed, but on the 89-90 card, they mistakenly pictured his brother Chris on the card, but they put Kevin's name on it. Rather than get the correct photo up there, they said, you know what, screw it, we're just going to turn this into a card of Chris and just be done with it that way. And so I've been trying to get the corrected version signed by Chris and get the error version that has Kevin's name and Chris's photo signed by both of them. I had one that was signed on the back by Kevin, mailed it off to Chris, never saw it again. I have a few unsigned copies of it that I could probably try to get redone and all that, but it's tough because I can't really nail down exactly where either of the Hundelts are now, so yeah. I'll be hoping for, but again, not holding my breath exactly. Ron Newman. This one I got signed in the 2002 Cleveland event. He was there coaching the alumni teams, and whoever it was that was sitting next to him was laughing about his expression there, whatever he was screaming about or screaming at, whichever one. 96 here. 90-91 was the first time that Pacific put out any multiplayer cards. They did it with all of their All-Stars, which I'll get to here in a bit. They also did this one here with the MISL champs, the San Diego Sockers. Got a picture of them with the league championship trophy. And I was able to get this one signed by George Fernandez and Ralph Black, and I figured that's probably good enough. There's a few guys in the background there too, but I think just the main two in the photo is probably enough for me. Let's see here. Baltimore's next up in here. Nothing really crazy to show off there. And Wichita. St. Louis, several players from there. Okay, so Emil Dragicevic, who I mentioned earlier, did play with St. Louis. So it was one of the other guys there. I think Nenad Markusevich, who might not have played with them. Get in there. There we go. Kind of random. They put in a card of St. Louis's assistant coach, Denny Vaninger, which, of course, I got signed by him. But that year, yeah, I don't think they didn't put a card of Don Popovich that year. They did the year before, and they might have done one with him. Yeah, they might have done one with him earlier in this set, and I'm just totally forgetting about him. I just, passed over it. But yeah, put a random card. He's the only assistant coach to get a card in the set, so that's cool, I guess. Let's see here. You probably saw there I had the first cards with St. Louis, finally with fans in the stands there of theirs. And it's the same deal here on all of those Cleveland Crunch ones, mixing sports here. As get their Bobo Lucic's card there, you can actually see there's stuff in the background. It's not taken at their practice facility this time. Give you a clearer view here of Simon Keith's signature. There. Dave Clements actually owns a cotton candy distributing company. He owns distributes cotton candy machines. Kind of in the Denver area, if I remember right. This one's another one that took a little bit of an effort to be able to complete, but got this one in a trade signed by Victor Nogueira, and I was able to get Zoltan Toth on it in Las Vegas. Yet another one of those multiplayer ones. It's kind of tough to compete, but I got it done. Let's see. This is also the first set to actually have checklists in there, and so I was trying to figure out, okay, what should I do with these checklists? Because I didn't really know who any of the team owners were or anything like that, so I thought, well, wait a minute. What if I go with some of the broadcasters on there? And so on the first one, which has the Dallas Stars color, or Dallas Sidekicks colors on it, I got hockey on the mind apparently, but have Dallas Sidekicks colors across the bottom. I would figure, why not get the Dallas Sidekicks broadcaster on? So that would be the legendary Norm Hitzkes, signed this one. Got that one after a Sidekicks game up in Allen. Crap, I got these all over the place now. Okay. 9 and 160 goes right here. Okay, there we go. The referees actually all got cards in the set, or several referees did, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 referees were given cards. Marty Templin, Gino DiPolito, Kelly Mock, Mahid J, Herb Silva, Brian Hall, and S.A. Baharmast. I've gotten 6 of them, all except for Mahid J. Nobody knows where he is. A lot of weird stuff going on there. I've tried to dig around, find anything I can on the guy, and anything about his involvement in soccer just kind of ends after 1994, and that's when everything just kind of goes all haywire. There are addresses for him all over the country. There's a couple of criminal complaints against him. He's been involved in a couple of lawsuits even as recently as this past year. So he's still alive. He's still out there. Looks to be in the Las Vegas area. But when I sent my letter to Brian Hall asking him to sign my cards, he's head of one of the referees organizations now. And I asked him, hey, do you know anything about, the whereabouts of Mahid J? And he writes a note back and he says, nobody knows where he is. So your guess is as good as mine. I would put him as probably the second toughest autograph to get for this set, and right behind Nenad Nikolic, and just ahead of totally blanking on the defenseman there from Baltimore. But those 3 would be the 3 toughest, I think, by far. They also did a card of each of the All-Star teams. And so with those ones, what I did was I just mailed them off to the head coach of each of the teams. And so Kenny Cooper signed the Eastern All-Stars card. And the late, great Ron Newman signed the Western Conference card. It's great. I got a message on Facebook from Ron Newman's daughter asking, hey, yeah, we got your autograph request in the mail. Did you want these cards signed on the front, on the back, where at specifically? And I just said, yeah, anywhere on the front, and got them back. Newman died, unfortunately, a few years ago, but I got to meet his son, daughter, and his widow all at the Las Vegas event. Great people, great family there. They've been involved in soccer forever, and yeah, they're just really awesome people. So I mentioned before, this was the first set to have multiple player cards for all the All-Stars. And so I've been trying to get those ones completely signed as well. So far, I've managed to finish off, what, 1, 2, 3... Managed to finish off 3 of them so far completely from the 90-91 set. Cleveland being the first one with Michael King, Kai Hoskevy, Bernie James, and Mike Sweeney. That one I got signed through the mail by King. Then who was it after that? It was King first. Got both Hoskevy and Sweeney at the NASL event. And then finally I was able to mail it off to Bernie James, and he finished that one off also about a year ago. So 172 is going to be up here. Kansas City card. The Kansas City card, fortunately, only had 3 players, but these 3 players were all in different countries, with Kim Rontved being in the U.S., Jan Goossens being over in Denmark, and Dale Mitchell up in Canada. I think I signed in, I think it was Goossens, and then Rontved, and then Mitchell is how I got that one done. And let's see here, is that the St. Louis? Yeah, St. Louis card is... Okay, we'll do the Dallas one, actually. 75 will go in here. Card 176. Dallas, I think, may have been the first one that I got finished off, because all 4 of these guys have been doing various alumni events there with the sidekicks. So I got Michael Powers, Chris Sobieski, Doc Lawson, and Tattoo all on those. A couple of them were in person, a couple of them by mail. And St. Louis All-Stars, this is as far as I'm probably going to be able to complete this one, because now we're at the point where 2 out of these guys have died. Godfrey Ingram and Gary Heel, both still alive. Fernando Clavio, I mentioned earlier, and Slobo Ilizhevsky. And this one is signed by Clavio, but not Ilizhevsky. So unless I'm able to find one that's signed by both Clavio and Ilizhevsky, and, well, possibly by all 4, at least that has those 2 on it, then this is as far as I'm going to be able to get on this particular one. They also did individual all-star cards of the players in this one. They doubled the size of the set this year. It was a 220 card set versus the 110 the first 3 seasons. So yeah, they made all-star cards of all these guys. Who else? Put in some all-star action ones as well, like this one, which I've got Michael King and Dale Mitchell on. And one that I've gotten both Zoran Karic and Jan Goossens on. Threw in some random action like this one of both Thompson Usian and Ralph Black going up for a header together. One of Ben Collins and Dev Reeves. And they did cards for all of the award winners as well. And yeah, here's the one that I wanted to mention before. I was talking about Billy Phillips. Phillips actually works with the Dallas Mavericks basketball team now in their ticketing department. And he said the photo on this card said a lot of the guys that are out there, they'll do their legs up with Vaseline, so that, they can, if they end up, sliding along the turf there, they're not going to get, totally scraped up real bad, at least not as bad. And so whenever they were on the road, he says he would have this pair of khakis that he would usually, wear for a couple of games. They would kind of get gunked up with all the Vaseline getting on it from players on the bench and everything. And so the pants just at times would look absolutely terrible, but it worked out. And so he says, of course, what do they do on my Coach of the Year card? They have me wearing those pants on it. So there it is. But yeah, he does a lot of the Sidekicks alumni events there as well. 211 goes in here. The other checklist card I got signed by John Paul Della Camera, another longtime broadcaster. He did a lot of their coverage on ESPN and the USA Networks for a lot of the nationwide broadcasting there for the MISL. But I got that one through the mail. He was also at the NASL event because he was being honored by the Soccer Hall of Fame, being inducted as a builder of the sport. And yeah, that's about covers it for that one. Did one more MISL set and an NPSL set. I'll get into a little bit of the NPSL history there in a bit. This one, they shrunk back the size for the last MISL set. It was down to 160 cards, and then also a 10-card bonus set as well. But here, I'll show off the design real quick on this one. I think this Bronco Segota card was probably the first one I got signed in this design. That was another one at the 2002 event there in Cleveland. And this one, I don't think there are very many. I don't think there are very many big names in here that made their debut in this set. A lot of these guys were longtime vets, had already been around for a number of years at this point. I don't think there's any weird stories behind any of these at all. Okay, Tom Soen or Sayan or something like that. He's now an assistant coach with, I think, the New England Revolution. So I got that one signed after an FC Dallas game when they played against the Revs. Starting to lose my voice here a little bit, but fortunately, like I said, I'm almost done here with all of these. Dominic Feltham is one where I had to send off to the UK to get him, if I remember right. I sent off to the UK or I traded for it. Either way, he's in the UK now. Mentioned before, Mike Reynolds was the name I was trying to think of before, but they did an in memoriam card of him in that 91-92 set. Let's see here. Notice later on when I get into the All-Stars that the Dallas Sidekicks did not have an All-Stars card, and that was because that year they hosted the All-Star game, and because of an uneven number of teams, and the league was kind of starting to shrink at that point. This was the last year before they went under. They had the All-Star game as the Sidekicks versus the rest of the league's All-Stars, and clearly the rest of the league's All-Stars absolutely hammered them in that game, but that's why there's no Sidekicks team All-Stars card in the set. Terry Woodbury's nephew played, I believe, either for FC Dallas or for New England. It's one or the other, but I ended up running into him at that same game there, and he recognized me because I was out at a whole lot of the Sidekicks of alumni games, and he was always at those and signed for me several times there. And he signs the card. He's like, "How did you know I'd be here?" I'm like, "Total guess. I knew your nephew played here, so brought the cards just in case." And yeah, ran into him right outside the stadium. It's the biggest thing you'll learn in the autograph hobby is always be prepared for anything. Yeah, like I said, really getting into a lot of guys that I've already shown off stuff from before. Yeah, I did manage to get another Slobo Ilizhevsky card at some point. Apparently I picked this one up in a trade and forgot about it or something, but it's another one of him. So I think there's only maybe, 3 cards of his that I'm missing now across all the sets. Like the simplicity of Rudy Pikazinski's autograph, which is a very simple Rudy 23. He's actually from the Buffalo area, still lives out there as well. I think he played with Buffalo in the AISA as well. He's actually 3-time MVP of the AISA, too. Otto Orff was an absolute legend in the Cleveland area. He's still a goalie coach down close to Akron now. Little over a year ago, they had it was the 25th anniversary of the Crunch's first championship. They put together a reunion of that team that Orff was running, and I emailed him. I said, "Hey, I'm not going to be able to make it because I live in Texas, longtime Crunch fan. Could I mail some cards up to you and possibly ask some of the guys to sign them if they're going to be there?" I said, "Yeah, go ahead and send them." And unfortunately, I got there too late, but he did at least sign the card of his that I had put in there, and so I've got his email and everything. If they ever run another event like that, I probably can contact him about it again. And so once again, we've got more of those multiplayer All-Star cards, as I mentioned before. The Baltimore one is probably about as done as I'm going to be able to get that one. It has it has 6 players on the front of it with Scott Manning, Dale Mitchell, Dominic Mobilio, Bruce Savage, head coach Kenny Cooper, and Billy Ronson. Mobilio and Ronson both have died, but I do have the other 4 all on it now at this point. It's kind of the same deal with the St. Louis All-Stars card. I think, did I get that one completed? Yeah, this one I think I actually have completed all the way. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, all 5 players on it. But this one is it all 5? Is that Yeah, it's interesting because it mentions on the back, it lists Claudio de Oliveira on the back, but it doesn't mention anything about Fernando Clavijo. And Clavijo is on the front of it, but it's not mentioned on the back. But it's signed by everybody that's on the front of it there. So that's Clavijo, Daryl Duran, Preki, Tomo Usian, and Godfrey Ingram all on there. And I'm trying to think which. Actually, I think this one got. I'm trying to remember what the order was that I mailed it out in and everything, but I think Preki was the last one that I was able to get on it. And that one was a huge gamble because I had tried Preki a couple times before with no luck. But I found an address that somebody else had tried out and it worked. So it's like, all right, fingers crossed, throw it out there, and it came back to me. The Cleveland one, I think this was the very first one that I completed out of any of them across the sets, at least when it comes to the All-Star ones. It's George Fernandez, Zoran Karic, and Hector Marinero all on it. Got Fernandez first, and then Karic, and then Marinero last, I think. Who else? That Tacoma card is probably about as complete as I'm ever going to be able to get it. It's another one that has, is it just the one who's died? Yeah, I think it's just the one who has died on it, but Chris Vaccaro, Ralph Black, and Gary Heel all signed it, and unfortunately Keith Weller, their coach, is one that I mentioned before, who died from, I believe it was a brain tumor back around 2004. Let's see. And then this one was kind of a cool one, too. This one was Fernando Clavijo and Chico Borja on it. And yeah, after that, like I said, they put together a 10-card insert of mostly award winners. I've got 9 out of 10 signed so far. Claudio de Oliveira is the only one I'm missing from there, and I do not know where he is. He's somewhere in Brazil, I think, but that's all I know. I've tried looking up his name, and there's a lot of Claudio de Oliveiras in Brazil, apparently, so haven't been able to find him yet. But yeah, I got 9 out of 10 of those, and most of the way through that set. And last, well, the MISL, as I said, went under after that 91-92 season. The AISA was the kind of competing league that was around there throughout the 80s. They eventually became the NPSL, which is the National Professional Soccer League. And so when the MISL went under, the teams pretty much split up. There was some who formed, I think it was the Continental Indoor Soccer League, the CISL. May have even been the WISL first. It was one or the other. I can't remember if it was WSL. I don't remember if it was WISL and then CISL or CISL and WISL. But the Western teams went out there. So San Diego joined out there. I think Tacoma Stars were out there. Wichita Wings probably would have gone that way too. Baltimore Blast, I believe, went to the NPSL. Dallas went out to the West. Kansas City, I think, went west. No, Kansas City stayed in the NPSL, as did St. Louis, Cleveland as well. But unfortunately for the NPSL, that meant that a lot of the MISL markets, which were in bigger cities, kind of took everything over, and a lot of these NPSL markets that were in smaller cities all kind of dried up. So like the Canton Invaders were this great team in there. They just couldn't compete for very long after that. You had teams in like Buffalo, in Dayton. I think Indianapolis may have had a team. You know, kind of like the secondary size markets behind the sizes of like the Clevelands, the Kansas Cities, the St. Louises, all those kinds of things. And yeah, so a lot of those kind of more traditional AISA and NPSL markets died out in favor of the MISL ones that came in. And eventually, the two leagues ended up merging back together into the MISL 2, just called the MISL, but it was the MISL 2 because it was kind of the second incarnation of it. And even that only lasted maybe another 5 years. The problem is there's always been too many competing factions around indoor soccer, and it just splintered itself way too much. So Pacific ended up transferring over to the NPSL for the 92-93 set. It was the last indoor soccer set that they put out, but here's the design of it. This is the Jason Dieter card. But a lot of these ones I picked up in that lot from that my friend Brian grabbed off eBay. he's just looking for only MISL stuff. So he said, yeah, I really don't care about the NPSL stuff. I will gladly sell all those to you. And so that's where all of these came from. But see if any names come up here again one more time. I know there's at least one that I want to show off if I can find it and remember where it was at. I mentioned Rudy Pikaczynski earlier. There's his brother Randy playing for Buffalo. Yeah, it looks like Baltimore's team moved over. They changed their name to the Spirit. So it went from the Baltimore Blast to the Baltimore Spirit. You had the Buffalo Blizzard. Had the Canton Invaders, who I mentioned earlier. I mentioned Gino DeFlorio earlier. He's another one who was a top indoor player of all time, and that's him with Canton after he played for the Cleveland Force for a bit. Yeah, he played for the Cleveland Force, Dayton Dynamo, Canton Invaders, Cleveland Crunch, Toronto Blizzard, and then Canton Invaders again, apparently. So, yeah. And Toronto Blizzard were part of the CSL, it looks like it says on there. So, let's see. Had, what team was this? Okay, the Chicago Power were another team that was in the league. Yeah, Cleveland Crunch moved over there as well. Had the Dayton Dynamo that I mentioned off the back of another guy's card there. Which team is that one? Okay, the Denver Thunder were another one that was in the league. Had the Detroit Rockers. Let's see. The Harrisburg Heat, there's Danny Kelly, another longtime player. I think he may be another 500-goal scorer, but I could be totally wrong on that. But it seems like I remember his name being up there. Doug Miller's another name that's really sticking out for me. I'm not quite as familiar with some of the NPSL guys so much as I am the MISL, but a lot of these names stick out for me for some reason, at least. All right, here's a name that if you follow current outdoor soccer, you might recognize his last name. This is a guy who played for the Harrisburg Heat, whose name is Mark Pulisic, father of Christian Pulisic of Team USA and Chelsea fame. Yeah, he played with Harrisburg Heat and I think maybe a couple other NPSL teams. And, of course, his kid has gone on to become the premier player of American outdoor soccer currently. Yeah, he's the big one that I was trying to find in there and trying to remember where he was at. Yeah, some other teams in there include the Kansas City Attack, formerly Kansas City Comets and became the Attack. The Milwaukee Wave. Mentioned before Victor Nogueira and Michael King. There's Nogueira with Milwaukee. Yeah, I got another Slobodan Ilozhevsky card in here as well. Had the Wichita Wings. So Wichita did join the NPSL rather than the Western League. CISL, WISL, whichever. And with this set, so it came out to 110 cards, but they also did a 10-card gold-bordered bonus set. This one I've only gotten about half of those ones signed. One, two, yeah, actually it's exactly half. There's the Dave Hagen one from it. And so, yeah, there you go. That is the all of the Pacific sets that I'm working on. I'm at about 80% completion on that as a project. And I didn't really start it in earnest until about, I think it was September of 2015. So we're coming up on 5 years now. I'm at about 80%. Trying to finish off the rest of it. Like I said, I reached out to a few guys on Facebook. I've heard back from 3 of them. I've mailed out I've mailed out 2 so far. I got another one's ready to go here pretty soon. Having to send over to Croatia for one and to South Africa for one. The other one is fortunately just over in Phoenix, so relatively close by comparatively. But hopefully those will be coming back. Hopefully I'll be showing those off on here. And hopefully you'll be seeing them here in a few weeks. So thanks again for tuning in. Check out, if you haven't hit the subscribe button, there we go, please do so. Most of my videos will be better than this one was, because I've been stumbling all over everything. And of course, make sure you're checking out sportscardforum.com. A lot of great info there on the TTM hobby and all things sports collectibles. We'll see you around.